Everybody, welcome to the live stream. Today we are here to talk about the Superchain, about Velodrome, about things even beyond that, right? Like things about how can we actually like really think about reshaping the world of finance and how can we make it more efficient? How can we actually like bring the next generation of users and institutions on chain? And how can we build a Superchain that's super powered by teams such as Velodrome? So with me today, I have two amazing guests. These are OGs. Personally, I will say like these are two people who really helped personally map my own world into the in crypto, and like I take a lot of inspiration from both of them. So it's a great honor to be introducing Smit from Optimism and Alexander, the founder of Velodrome. Myself, I'm Binji. I'm on the growth team at Optimism, but I'd leave it to you, Smit, to do an intro.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. First of all, like I feel like it's been a while since I've chatted with Alex face to face like this as well. Always on group calls together. Quick intro for me. My name's Smit. I've been with Optimism for about 4 years now across multiple different orgs, the lab side and the foundation side. I have a background in HFT, and today I lead a lot of our DeFi efforts, work closely with chain operators and the biggest DeFi apps on the Superchain. I'll hand it over to you, Alex.
Hello, I am Alex. I am one of the OG contributors to both Velodrome and Aerodrome. My background, started my career in politics, went to work in big tech, did some consulting, caught the DeFi bug in DeFi summer, and then sort of became an accidental founder after meeting some friends online, meeting Smit, meeting Binji, starting to build on Optimism, and one thing led to another.
Yeah, I just want to add a piece here. I think like personally, when I first heard of Velodrome, when I first heard Smit give a DeFi pitch for L2s generally, at this time, I think like DeFi and L2s was not a thing. It simply was not really a thing. There's maybe like 2 or 3 apps on OP mainnet at the time. And the fact that Velodrome's took this bet to like jump into this ecosystem and really be hand in hand in helping us build it has been incredible to watch. So like this feels like a really like, hey, we did that. Now it's our next step to like run it back and do it in an even bigger and broader level through the Superchain. So like just absolutely stoked. So, without further wait, would love to dive a little bit into Velodrome, into your guys' story, into how it's been building this off of friends that you met online to like the behemoth that it is today. Would love to learn a bit more about your personal story within that. And then also, tangibly, like how has it been scaling something in crypto across multiple different chains today and multiple different ecosystems?
Yeah. So I think it's a super fun story. I mean, there were a handful of us who were a part of a sub DAO in early 2022, which, to orient you, is kind of right before the wheels started coming off the last cycle. So things were still feeling pretty good. But the DAO that we were a part of was basically built to work as closely on Andre Croney's new deck solidly in the Phantom ecosystem as possible. And so we met working on that because we were passionate about what Andre had built, and we were passionate about the DEX and DeFi space generally. But we realized, I think, pretty quickly that there were, some issues with Solidly that basically could be improved. And then, of course, we went through a period where it was just one crazy thing after another in DeFi, and the cycle collapsed, and everyone started leaving the space, and all that fun stuff. But the basic idea is what we saw in Solidly was this idea of a meta DEX, and the idea behind a meta DEX is a DEX that brings together the best primitives of all the different DEXs, so the best of Uniswap, the best of Curve, the best of Convex, and the ecosystem around these DEXs that built up over time. Bring that all together into a single streamlined design and leverage an economic model that aligns the incentives of all participants, aligns the incentives of traders, of LPs, and of users of the token. And so we really believed in the model, right? We believe this was truly a next generation DEX design, that Andre had sort of pioneered. And we believe if we took it, right, and we made some adjustments to it, we fixed some things, we continue to add to it over time, that this could be that like real core disruptive liquidity layer. And at that point, then the question was, where do we go actually deploy it? And even still at that moment, pretty much everybody said, well, you got to build on alt L1s. You know, alt L1s are where all the users are. So, you know, stay on Phantom, go to Avalanche, you know, maybe Ethereum mainnet, just basically anywhere other than the ETH L2 was the advice that we got from almost everybody. But we're very thesis driven. And I think at that particular moment, what we were looking at was what had really driven the hype around alt L1s. It was that they were fast. It was that they were cheap, that they were accessible. It was that these ecosystems created native tokens that could inject the sort of stimulus to bootstrap these economies. But fundamentally, that was something that the Ethereum ecosystem was going to be able to replicate with L2s, right? L2s were going to be faster. They were going to be cheaper. They were going to have native tokens and economies wrapped around them. And so our basic idea was, rather than skating to where the puck is right now, let's skate to where the puck is going. And in particular, if we're about to go through sort of like a cycle collapse, or, you know, the down end of the cycle, let's find where the biggest pocket of growth will be, even as maybe the pie shrinks a little bit. What's the section of the pie that's going to grow? And, you know, that's when we met Smit and NorthSwap and some of the folks on the Optimism team. And I think it became very clear to us that not only were we very passionate in this thesis, but we were very values aligned with Optimism as an organization. We saw that one of the biggest needs that they had was this sort of liquidity layer. I mean, they had great builders. They had Synthetics, Lyra, Thales, this native ecosystem, but it was difficult to access because liquidity was the issue. So we thought we had the sort of right sort of product, even though at that point, I think people believed maybe the model was broken. We didn't believe it. We thought we had the right ecosystem. People didn't believe in L2s yet, but we did believe in it. And we launched Velodrome on OP mainnet, and, you know, went through the Luna collapse and the FTX collapse, and basically, you know, everything we sort of feared might happen happened. But everything on the other side also happened, which is coming out of, you know, the bear market. L2s were ascendant. Optimism has clearly been leading the charge. The vision of the Superchain, the OP stack, signing up like so many amazing builders from Coinbase to WorldCoin, you know, bringing together this network and basically betting their house on, we're going to be that interoperable set of chains. You know, we're going to be essentially canonical Ethereum. We're going to unite this fragmented L2 landscape. We felt like we were in the right place.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, what a story, what a journey. And I'm like, this next chapter feels increasingly exciting. I really love the idea of like, you know, how can you adapt to different conditions that continue coming up in the space. And I think there's a sense of resiliency there that really makes for the best crypto companies, DAOs, entities generally. In this resiliency, one finds strength. So, yeah, excited to see what happens in the next couple months in the next chapter. Smit, you know, I would love to learn a bit more about your take around DeFi as a whole, its maturation from when you discovered it way back when, how it's kind of progressed in the L2 landscape, and how you think, you know, something like a Superchain Interop, what does this thing actually enable? Like, first of all, like, what is it? And how do you kind of see it fitting into your view of DeFi and like what you've kind of been seeing in the broader market?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And right before I go into that, I just want to give Alex and his team flowers where they deserve it. Like, one of the hardest things to do in the entire DeFi industry and the market is to survive. And there's like that framing or phrase that's kind of going around now on Velo's grind set. And I think it's like super true that like you guys have been super strong and have great grit going through these market conditions to keep building and continue doing what you guys think is best for the industry and best for you guys' business. So mad props to you guys. Going back to Interop, I'll talk maybe high level and on DeFi and Interop in general, and then I know Alex is going to go into some of the more like impacted fields for Velo as well. Generally, I think it's like theoretical, but it's actually very simple. When you like break down Interop to bare bones, it's just one block latency, the best execution that you want for your users across different chains and that fragmentation that exists today. And so some of the byproducts of what we've done over 2024 and the years before is like we've brought on more teams to build chains, but it created actually a worse UX in a weird way, because now we just have a bunch of economic hubs that are not connected. And so the beauty of like building those economic hubs though is like now you can build the bridges. And so we do want to create that. That was the plan from the beginning, but these things are sequencing pieces of events that like take a while to do. And so now base exists. We have quite a few other chains that are building their own economic hubs, World and these other ones, and they're not all going to look the same. And now the best thing that DeFi users and DeFi apps can do is build on top of the safest, lowest latency, highest security infrastructure to connect the dots. And so that's what Superchain Interop really is. It's the ability to go from one ecosystem or economic hub to the other without really knowing. It's that abstraction. And so you'll have these economic hubs that are connected. And when I think about it from a user perspective, I shouldn't even know that I'm going from one place to the other. Like World's 30 million users should not have to know that they're going through liquidity on World, for example. And World Chain should not have to rebuild all of that liquidity on their ecosystem when they can just tap into it on Velo or Arrow somewhere else in the ecosystem within one block. And so that's really the big unlock of like, we call TVL sort of a vanity metric sometimes, but it really is like, TVL is a vanity metric if like your goal is to grow it in every economic hub the same exact way. But because you can really do a lot more by like condensing, collating, and doing all of this like fancier stuff together. And so I'm very excited about what you guys are doing at Velo with Interop. I think it's going to be super powerful. And as a user, I just get to benefit off the best rates, the best yields, the best trade execution. And that's what I really think Interop is about. Oh, you're muted.
Apologies. When you see kind of like the steps that are necessary for someone to get to this state with an Interop, like where are you? Either anyone can answer this. Like, where do you guys feel you are at today, and how is your understanding if it been changed over time as well?
Yeah, maybe I can take a step first. And I know Alex, you guys have been building with it, so it's a little like more practical for you guys. Mm-hmm. I think any big upgrade in the industry requires a bit of a rollout. So it takes time to educate. It takes time to build docs, testing frameworks. And so we've been going through the same woes of, it's not just building the underlying protocol tech. It's migrating the tokens. It's convincing the wallets to build in a very specific way. It's definitely a bigger lift. And so we've been doing a lot of that work prior to Interop launch, which I think is part of the bedrock that we need to build so that app developers can get the experience that's at least 70 to 80% of the way there when it launches. And then we work on making sure that the rest is migrated. And so that's sort of how I think about Interop's rollout. Like, I'm super excited. The testnets are out there. You can go build. And it's our job now to start convincing the app developer community, all the auxiliary integrations, to start moving towards the right direction so that Alex and other developers do not need to worry about like some of like the underlying protocol tech.
Yeah. And I guess Alex, on this side, right? Like you're building a DeFi protocol. You have users already there who are already used to a certain experience. And then now you're talking a protocol that's like, hey, we have this new thing. It's going to like do this for you, that for you. Like how, I guess one, like how do you buy trust into that, right? Like, 'cause there's so many solutions probably being pitched at you in this ecosystem. There's so many things happening. How do you pick like, okay, like this is actually a solution that we believe in and we want to be early on and we want to be like a first mover in? What's been the rationale there in, what ended up in this scenario where it's like you are going to be a first mover, a day one Superchain Interop partner, and an app that is powered by the Superchain Interop set?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about this is just like one thing I've definitely learned being in this industry for a while right now is that the zeitgeist, right? Whatever the current topic or culture is, whatever's currently being discussed on crypto Twitter or all that. It's always just kind of like one step behind. It's like it's always about sort of things that have just happened, right? So for those of us who have been paying attention in the space, we've known what the L2 scaling roadmap has meant for Ethereum, right? And the idea was that to scale this broader network, we were going to need all of these L2 chains. And there's all these benefits to doing this. And every chain, if it's going to reach world scale, it's going to have some sort of L2 like scaling solution to it. But we knew in doing that, I mean, the hard part, honestly, is getting everyone to come build the chains. Because if you're not doing that, then nobody's using your network, and there's sort of no point in doing anything else. But once you had them, we always knew that the end game was going to be to bring them together. And bringing them together basically means that you get the benefit of a network of individualized chains, and each of these chains can make their own choices around how they optimize for speed, how they incentivize economic models, security models, all of that fun stuff. It can function such that you can have companies like Sony say they want to build a chain, and DeFi builders build a chain, and companies like Coinbase build a chain, and they can all make it work for their particular purposes, right? That's the beauty of it. But from a user perspective, yes, this has been suboptimal. Exactly as Smit said, it's a fragmentation of user experience, it's a fragmentation of liquidity. And I think from the very beginning, right, from the very first time the Optimism team shared the vision for the Superchain, it's just felt like, well, okay, this is the ultimate end game of the L2 sort of Ethereum scaling solution. And yes, we all wish it had been here a year ago, but I don't think anyone's been unclear that the end state here is coming. And so, like, to answer your question, I mean, like, how do you onboard people to it? Well, I think it's going to be quite easy. The way we're going to onboard people to it is the fact that everybody knows what it feels like to use a single chain. When you're on Ethereum, you know what it feels like to use Ethereum. When you are on Solana, you know what it feels like to use Solana. When you're on OP mainnet, you know what it feels like. It feels cohesive, right? At least as cohesive as anything DeFi or crypto feels right now. And the whole goal, I think, with Optimism Interop, and it's so amazing that we'll be able to see this soon, because I don't think anybody has actually realized that this is about to happen, is that it will just feel again like a single chain for most users. And for builders, it's going to massively change how you think about investing your time and your resources, because it's going to remove all this fragmentation. So I'll just use the really practical example here. Like when you are on Ethereum mainnet and you've got some ETH in your wallet and you see a new cool shitcoin that is launching, we'll call it Binji coin, and you just want to run to a DEX as fast as you can and swap all your ETH to Binji coin, right? Easy. You do that. You go to the DEX, you see your ETH balance, you find the coin you want, you swap for it, boom, done. Right now, if you were to do that on the Superchain, you could have some ETH on Base, you could have some ETH on OP mainnet, you could have some ETH on Sonium, you could have your ETH on World, and you'd have to like kind of go through a process if you wanted to get all that ETH bridged to the chain on which this token launched, and then swap for it. And probably by that point, you've missed your 1000x on Binji coin, and you wonder, what's wrong with Ethereum that they've fragmented all this stuff, and it's such a terrible experience, right? So the promise, right, of Interop and what is coming very, very soon is that in this scenario, if you are on the Superchain, you don't even necessarily need to know when you go visit Velodrome which chain you're on. You're going to see a unified ETH balance, right? Some of that ETH could be on World, could be on Sony, could be on OP mainnet, could be wherever. And wherever on the Superchain, that Binji coin is launching, you will be able to access it. So it'll be the same experience. Unified ETH balance, you put your ETH in, you swap to your Binji coin, it lands on whatever chain that it that it launched on, and it just feels once again like you've used a single chain in doing this. And this is so exciting as well because, as Smit mentioned, like we've been working with Superchains, for over a year now, and it is very hard for these chains to scale. And it's exactly for the reasons Smit described, which is for each chain to succeed, they need to like bootstrap a sufficient amount of wrapped ETH USDC liquidity to ensure that their ecosystem has enough liquidity to support the novel products that they're building. They need to attract a DEX. They need to attract a perps exchange. They need to attract the lending market, right? And that means rather than spending their time focusing on growing their niche, right? Whether it's like consumer products on Sonium, whether it's new and novel like Bitcoin products and build on Bitcoin, whether it's, any number of different novel cases, rather than doing that, they're just rerunning the DeFi bootstrapping playbook over and over again. They're wasting their time on that. They're probably investing a ton of money in it because these protocols, need to be like incentivized and built up. And so we're two birds with one stone, which is saying, hey, the bare bone infrastructure, that's going to be universal superchain. There's already a very liquid DEX here. You don't have to worry about bootstrapping a wrapped ETH pool. That's been taken care of for you. You're tapping into this deep thing. Just focus on the niche, your angle and how you're innovating in this market. You do that. Superchain takes care of the rest. And from the user perspective, you're maybe one day very interested in DeFi products that are living on one chain, and the next moment you're interested in a new interesting social platform that's living on another chain, but you don't feel like it's separate chains. You are just like using the Superchain just like you use the internet, and you've got no idea all the underlying protocols and technology that make it feel like a single cohesive experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess one of the things that I am particularly excited about is also this idea that you can move a lot of size as well. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen in these ecosystems. Like you could, let's say you have like $100 million on OP mainnet, and there's a cool opportunity that happens on another chain. Right now, if you have that much capital, for you to move it, you're going to get absolutely wrecked on slippage. Maybe things, there's not enough balance. Like there's all these issues that can emerge to move $100 million. Now to move $1 billion, it just gets more and more and more. And if we're thinking about this world in which institutions are coming on chain, where massive swaths of capital are coming on chain, that's happening today. How do you actually accommodate for that? How do you actually make sure that these institutions, when they come in and when this massive amount of capital, when it comes in, can just traverse to the opportunities that it sees best? And I think with the idea of Interop, it's there's a side of the user being able to go from one chain to another in 2 seconds. There's also the side of the massive institution with hundreds of millions of dollars being able to move that amount of size in 2 seconds with zero slippage. And I think there's this whole world that should emerge into, which I'm really, really excited about to see as well. So I would love your take on what you see potentially panning out in this space too.
Yeah, I think abstraction is the big one, right? We've been slowly moving to abstraction by proxy. You have these vault style things, you have ALMs that maybe make it easier for you to provide liquidity. And so they're doing it, but they're bottlenecked by underlying tech still. You can't do crazy size, or you're going to get blown out by slippage, or the current interop systems out there, they have to wait till specific tags have finalized on these chains. And so that timing is 10 minutes or something like that. And so no third-party interop provider will take on the risk during those cases. And so you really do need fundamentally interop baked into the protocol. And so this, what you called out, Binji, that property is only possible because we've made a deliberate decision to preserve homogeneity with these chains, because there's no longer weakest link security problem. You as a giant institution or LP do not have to worry about your funds on OP mainnet versus base. It's the same exact code base to a T. They have different design choices that they've made on a sidecar solution, but the underlying protocol, the kernel that secures your funds, is audited heavily, and it has secured billions and billions of dollars. So you can make that move of $100 million from one chain to the other without having to worry about the security of it. And so that opens up a crazy design space of what you can do with capital, what you could do with like even block space, right? So like if Velo is getting a ton of activity on just like the ETH USDC pool, they could make that its own separate dedicated block space. Like if that is churning up like 99% of the block space currently on the chain, it almost makes sense to have dedicated block space for that. But it's not possible if like you have to wait 10 minutes to get in and out of that experience. But if it's only 1 second, or even better, like 200 milliseconds once we get shared block building, the sky's the limit here. And so I kind of want to go in further and further into this world of this obfuscation abstraction. And so like teams don't have to spend incentives growing liquidity everywhere. Teams don't have to worry about best execution, because I personally would not want you to swap your ETH for USDC on OP mainnet if the price execution is better on base. Like I would want as a user to get the better price execution from the better, deeper pool. And so those are kind of things that like, they seem like quality of life things, but they've been created through like further and further fragmentation and lack of abstraction. And so I'm very excited about that. The fintechs and like all these big TradFi institutions, they're going to continue to push the needle now that the tech is ready. And so like, yes, they get their choices, but they also get the best of what we've all created here over the last several years of time.
Yeah, it's really exciting to be able to talk about it now. Like, I think it's very early in this process, and it's great to talk to a first mover in this process, but it's very much something that we're actively going to build towards together. And I see a lot of like cohesion and a lot of, I think that one of the interesting things that Jack actually from Velodrome had mentioned to me some time ago was like the best way to do things in crypto is like compound things. And I think like Velodrome's really done that. It's like compounded multiple ecosystems together, and it's been doing that at the app layer for a really long time. And now it's like, okay, at the chain level, the protocol level, let's compound all of these different chains and the activities that happen within them, the various different teams, the successes from that happens on one chain. How can you actually share it with others? And how can you actually have like a positive sum ecosystem that can just, if you're a user, you're just on this one thing and everything's abstracted from you, and you get the best rates, the best deals in whatever it is that you're doing. So it's really exciting to see. And I think it's like, it's interesting because it's very novel. And I think when we say interop, people sometimes would be like, oh, like, okay, like bridging. But it's not just bridging. It's like a lot more than that. It's horizontal smart contracts. And it just enables this like complete new design space. So we're really, really excited to see like net new apps also get incubated, created through this. And especially as we kind of move forward with what we're both doing respectively and now together, I'm sure we'll discover a lot of other things as well. So, I guess more tactically there, like, how will Velodrome, like, how do you guys plan to use Superchain Interop? What are the problems that you face today that you think this like new solution could help fix? And what excites you the most within that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think about this is that liquidity is a necessary condition for growth of ecosystems, right? This goes back to what I was describing in, Velodrome choosing to launch on OP mainnet some time ago, and that the biggest sort of issue with growth was not lack of interest or lack of builders. That really it was liquidity was the issue, and this was the same cold start problem every single ecosystem has. And so if fundamentally Velodrome's liquidity pools are now accessible as seamlessly as if they were on a single chain across the super chain, we've unlocked an extraordinary amount of growth potential for each of these ecosystems. Because the second point is like fundamentally for a DEX, what is most important? It is that you have the most active tick liquidity possible to deliver the best possible trade execution on something. And right now, you will get very different slippage on wrapped ETH USDC depending on what chain you are on. But you as a user, you don't care. You just want the best execution. You don't even care which DEX it's on, right? You just want the best execution. And so what this does is basically allows us to really create these hubs of liquidity of major pairs, make them accessible across the whole super chain, And the MetaDex model has shown an ability to attract and retain more of that app-to-tick liquidity than any other model. And so this just opens up the sort of not only like economic opportunity of all these protocol swappers now have access to these pools, but basically opens up the opportunity for us to capture more and more and more as the network effects of the Superchain grow, right? We've already seen that across major trading asset pairs, the best execution, despite much deeper pools on paper existing on networks like Ethereum, that trading activities move to L2s. If we're going to bring all of these chains together, that sort of I guess like consolidation and growth of activity is only going to accelerate. So our goal from the day that Interop was announced was that we believe that this will essentially be the canonical scaling solution of Ethereum. We think for most users using the Superchain, they will just see as using Ethereum. And fundamentally, what we want to do is we want to be that core trading and liquidity hub, like of basically new Ethereum that's going to onboard businesses, Ethereum that's going to onboard institutions, users, social apps. We want to be that essential infrastructure for that layer. And so that's been our goal, and that's why we're so excited we're finally here.
It's awesome. And I think when you mentioned being a part of multiple different ecosystems within the Superchain, like you have skin in the game in a lot of these ecosystems. And that's a great segue actually to how does Optimism have skin in the game when it comes to helping its apps, helping its ecosystem, especially as Superchain Interop starts rolling out, and the effort from the Optimism team, which is okay, for step one, let's get all these chains. Step two, now let's get Interop and all these apps on these chains, and let's work together with these applications to make net new experiences that'll onboard the next generation of liquidity, users, everything in between. So Optimism is actually kicking off a new campaign to use their Velo to support the growth of pools across the Superchain. Maybe a little alpha leak here potentially. So Smit, Alex, anything you mentioned there? How are you thinking about this? What does this mean? And yeah, would love to hear.
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. Toot Alex's horn on his behalf instead of him doing it himself. But Optimism always wants to invest in the developers that are impacting the ecosystem most, and we've been with Velo for a very long time. Also, I think it seems like it may be behind a veil, but it really isn't. We've been using Velo and voting on pools for a very long time now. We've been max locking, and we're going to continue to do so, only to compound and showcase our investment in Velo more. And so our positions have only grown larger in size since the beginning, and we're going to continue to do so going forward. And so this campaign that you're talking about, Binji, on investing more and more into the ecosystem, into the app developers, we want to continue to vote on these pools, get very basic liquidity for these chains. And I think Velo has some of the best models out there in the industry to do this. So that's the TLDR. We're going to keep compounding all of our voting rewards. We want to make sure that we're investing in developers the most. So Alex, if you have other ideas in which we can continue to invest in you guys, we want to showcase that. But generally, I think the model has definitely proven itself out, and we want to continue to showcase that to the other chains and build that abstracted homogeneous ecosystem.
Yeah. I think one thing we love to talk about is aligning incentives. And, there are a lot of different ways you can align incentives. And we think our model aligns incentives very well. But we aligned our incentives with those of Optimism and the broader Superchain by choosing not only to build here, but continue to remain focused entirely on building here. So, Velodrome, Aerodrome, these protocols only succeed if Optimism and the broader Superchain succeeds, right? So our incentives have been aligned from the very beginning. And I think what's really, really incredible, right, is that Optimism is a literal stakeholder in our success as well. And when they are using, their own VE Velo, right? Not only are they able to do the things that our model does really well, which is like directionally send incentives to pools of strategic importance. And this is the same thing like Coinbase Ventures has done with Aerodrome. They're able to vote using just the tokens that they have and bootstrap liquidity on pools of strategic importance. They earn back rewards through that process, right? If they are voting to bootstrap pools that become very, very significant, they compound those rewards, grow their voting power so that they can incentivize even more pools on the chain. But I think it's so amazing, and like we are so incredibly appreciative that you guys have like remained invested in our success, and that the same way in which we share in like the success of the broader Superchain, you guys are sharing in the success of Velodrome and the MetaDex generally. And yeah, I think it will enable us to do some very, very cool things in supporting builders across the Superchain.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, really, really excited. It feels like the start of like the second chapter. I mean, the third chapter technically of like where we're all heading. First we had OP mainnet. Now we have like multiple different chains, and now we're gonna have an interconnected superchain that feels like one. And I think there's something really like worthwhile celebrating there. And it's just incredible to have such great partners from day one who've been with us since day one. And in this new adventure of ours and this new transition into something even greater than the sum of its parts. One of the things that I just want to wrap up with here, since we're short on time, is, what is most exciting to you just in crypto today? Like, is there something that you are like thinking about a ton? Is there a part in which like you think the superchain can play a big role in? Is there anything there? Like, feel free to also just like deflect the question. That's okay. It's a hard question. I don't know what my answer would be, but like, curious what your take might be there. As the final question for both whoever wants to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll channel just a little bit of my inner Jesse, but it does really feel like we are beginning to bring the world on chain, and not just on chain, but on to Ethereum. I really think people don't appreciate how insanely crazy it is that companies like Coinbase, companies like Kraken, companies like Sony, like World, are all choosing to not just build on Ethereum, but build on the OP stack. And we're starting to see this proliferation of not only new and novel sort of crypto protocols, companies, tokens with utility, but we're seeing a proliferation of all sorts of new and interesting things. We're seeing a growing FX volume on chain. We're seeing payments processors come on chain, use on chain rails to deliver products better than they ever have before. We're seeing new and emergent social platforms like Zora using token in the on chain economy to do things that were previously impossible. And we are seeing institutions and major players, right, starting to engage seriously. And for those of us who have been following the space, building the space for a while, there is so much that is happening right now that felt like a pipe dream or seemed so far away not that long ago. And it really does feel like the pieces are starting to come together. And it is coming together around Ethereum, around the OP stack, around the superchain. And it's just, I think, a very, very exciting time.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think, Alex, you kind of captured the entire industry's sentiment with how you mentioned the time is here, channeling inner Jesse as well. I think it's been amazing to watch like the 0 to 1, like being a part of it to get to this point and see where we're going from here, where institutions believe it's credible. The new administration is pushing the bounds. There's just a lot of positive momentum going in the direction for the industry, especially financial applications. Like every now and then I'll watch like podcasts outside of our industry as well. And I'll see like the Stripe CEO talk about how bullish he is on stablecoins and how he's going to bring the entire economy on chain as well in that sense. talking about L2s. And I feel like it's such a crazy shift from the credibility our industry had before. And so I love like how optimized we got with like the lower fees, scaling Ethereum, those rails over the last few years, because now we have something to really build on top of. And that makes it super exciting for us all. And to Alex's point, like to me, it's so exciting that like you have these hubs of users and distribution, like World literally bringing on tens of millions of users every single year. And that activity is happening on chain. And so more and more of that will continue happening. I'm very bullish on where the Superchain is going, but more importantly, like just generally the industry, Ethereum is powering a lot of this activity. And so I'm excited to see all of that come on chain and be an accelerant on all of the existing activity that exists today.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for your time and thanks for sharing your thoughts. Agreed. It's a very exciting time for crypto. It's time to win as well. And I think there's something really powerful there where like, it feels like there's all these chess pieces that we're trying to be assembled that are assembled now. And it's actually time to like make moves that impact the broader world, even outside of our small bubble, which I think is happening slowly day by day. And, we're building the infrastructure and working with the right teams to power that. We're here for the home stretch, and there's like, this is a never ending battle of us continuously bringing the world on chain. But I think we are better positioned to do that now than ever, because so much of crypto's failures have been because like things have been isolated in different parts. Now we're actually connecting a lot of them together. So really, really stoked to be doing this. Excited for Velodrome to be day one app partner on Superchain Interop launch. And yeah, let's go build the Superchain, guys. Thanks for your time.